Thank you again for coming to join us at the CHIL, the Coalition of Hamilton Indigenous Leadership Tea Talks. And I have a very special guest today with me, Kat Cayuga, and we're going to have a conversation about the arts and how we feel about that. So thank you for joining me today to come and talk about this. So if I can I get you to just a little introduction about yourself?
Sego, Kat ni Youngjats, Okwari Nita Doroden. My name is Kat Cayuga. I've been born and raised in Hamilton. I'm Ganoha to a mother, and I don't know, I think maybe you're always an artist, but I am a multimedia artist. I've worked in theater, I've worked in film, I've worked in print, I've worked in radio. So I've worked in a lot of different areas of the arts. I've worked as an artist, and I've also worked in promoting and our people in what they call arts administration. And I'm very happy to be here and to be able to share what I have in terms of my knowledge around art.
Thank you, Kat. I've known you for a long time, Kat. We have shared a long path. I know in the beginning, I call it my first life, NEPA, my first life. And that's where I met you. I met you during that time. We were both at least in the field of the arts, working with Canada Council, Ontario Arts Council, artist-run centers. Mm-hmm. So that's a whole different language there. I remember in the community it was, the artsy-fartsy types, right? Well, we're kind of it, but I want to talk a little bit about that, your involvement. Like, I remember back in the day, you used arts in many ways, right? You know, as an artist, but you used it for the work you were doing. I remember one time you were working in youth, doing theater. You've also not just a regular, like one media. You've done many things.
Yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about what you've done.
Okay. So once again, I'm appreciative of being here and being able to talk with you. I have a long history in the arts. I guess some people would say I'm a multimedia artist because I've worked in different medias. Yes. And I'm not sure exactly how we want to start this conversation, or like a little background. Just quickly in the background, I started off doing theater. And the very specific kind of theater, there was a place called the Theater School for Aboriginal people, and what happens is it was very colonial in how it was run, right? And so a group of us, after we'd been there, we decided, but we looked at there could be different ways in which theater can support our community with a kind of different dialogue or way of speaking. And one of the things that actually came up was popular education or popular theater. So we started looking at collectives that come out of the Caribbean, and there was a collective in the Caribbean that was doing popular education, popular theater. And I remember when they came and they started talking about this, I thought, this is actually it. Because it works on the premise that that everybody has something that they know about an issue, and that we fill it in and then we can create theater. So it's really, and I also have a background of theater of press. I actually had an opportunity to work with Augusta Boal, so that was really important for me too, because what I recognize is that theater could be used as a tool to help us look at our own issues and have conversations with ourselves within our community, and using theater as a catalyst to start that conversation. And most of these pieces were made by community members. My most, the one that you're talking about in Hamilton, the Hamilton one was with the Board of Health, was with the HIV section of Board of Health, is to look at that particular issue. And so what happens was I got a group of kids from the Friendship Center, and we developed a piece. We developed a theater piece. And so what happens is that the theater piece ideally was to go to other communities and start conversations with youth, from youth to youth, that sort of peer idea of having conversations about what does this mean? How do we stay healthy? How do we stay, safe? So that's what happened in that one. But unfortunately, just due to a certain set of circumstances, that one never toured. So that's the kind of theater that I do. Yes. I mean, Romeo and Juliet is great, okay, but I think we have bigger issues, and I think we're very creative people, and art and culture are not separated. So what I find is that was a medium in which to really use to bring out voice, because I facilitate, but I don't write anything.
Yeah.
I don't write
Yeah.
the pieces.
Yeah.
You know, I allow people or youth people, I've done it with all ages, to be able to bring that voice out and to talk about what needs to be done. And so that's why, sort of like it's those techniques that Theatre of the Oppressed uses, sort of you stop, you can fill in the space, you can take places with people. So it has a lot of techniques to it. So that's basically where I started.
Okay. Yes, again, I just remember back in the day, and we were both, because I was running NEPA, the Native Indian Photographers Association, and that's how I met you. I met you coming in that situation. We just actually had Al and Carol Hill, and Linda Jenkins, and I realized when talking, they were all involved in NEPA, right? One was involved in the board of directors, and then I had two of them working with me. So we had some really, like just what you had told me, how we used our arts as part of healing, right? Helping people coming into the gallery, right? Promoting them, supporting them, and helping to give them that voice, to let them know they have a voice, right? So anyway, I would like to hear a little bit more. How do you feel?
I wanted to just jump on the NEPA thing.
Okay.
NEPA was exciting because at that point there was sort of this voice in art that was starting to become our ownership, as opposed to people dictating or prescribing to us how we had to do art. And I remember in the community all kinds of people walking around with cameras. Do you remember that?
Yes.
People were walking around with cameras, taking pictures of everything. And that was just so exciting. That was an exciting thing to see about NEPA. And I think the other thing about NEPA, because NEPA also then went into that whole idea of video, right?
Yes.
And which at that point became a whole different kind of media that's very different than printer photography. And I know at that time, there was this, and NEPA was sort of ahead of the curve on this one, in my opinion, a whole thing around video. And it had started out, there was the National Aboriginal Film and Video Alliance. And so I had the opportunity to help build the Ontario Aboriginal Film and Video Alliance. But that's what made NEPA really exciting, because I think NEPA was one of the only places in this country at that point was really doing this work, right?
In the early years, yes.
Yeah, and I think when you don't see art that often, or you don't see yourself in art that often, I think it's maybe something that people are not used to. I would say that our daughters right now, I know for sure my daughter right now sees herself in art. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so her whole response to art, or her analysis, political or otherwise, is really quite different, because she has that exposure to art. But I think that's what was exciting about Hamilton. And an artist-run center to boot, right?
It took a while to get it there.
I know. I mean, and that was incredible. It started a whole kind of like a movement of people going to do these things. And I think that's what, in Hamilton, we have to recognize the value of NEPA, and also recognize the value of how hard it was at that time for government funding to see us nothing more than bones and feathers, right? And so that I think that's what it's Hamilton made, and you should be proud, and all those who worked on NEPA should be proud, because it was something. It really was something. And how do you change that whole narrative, or what without putting on the colonial and oppressive intent about what art is? Yes. Right. Yes. And if art doesn't fit your norm, then it has no value. Then you know what I mean? In terms of that oppressive nature, that's what's been happening to us all along.
Yes, I agree.
Somebody knows better than we do. Knows better than how we should do it, and then is oppressive in its practice and how they put that in place, right?
Well, I think about too, like even up to, again, 1992 is a big time period when it came to the arts, okay? In the sense that I remember I was really working on, NEPA, the collection, working on some big exhibition. I think See Through Our Eyes at the time, See Through Our Eyes, Native Perspective. There's a very large collection of work, black and white, that I was trying to get out to the community, out there. Those were difficult times back then. And I really felt Even within the Native community, I felt like I always was trying to justify to everybody what we were doing. And even back then, before that, our history is Indians didn't like cameras. Like, we have a history way back where, you know, photography and Indians did not mix, right? Because there was that belief, like, you know, if someone took a picture of you, you were capturing their soul, right? So I went through that period too. Also, with the photography, it was predominantly male. So that was a hard struggle.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, so I really geared towards trying to help the women, support the women so they had a voice, so they could come forward through their photography. So, but yeah, just a lot.
You know, it's interesting about that piece about photography. I've thought about that a lot, about the idea of catching, you know, holding somebody's spirit.
Yeah.
I actually believe that to be true.
Okay.
I mean, for in that moment, you caught somebody's spirit. Like,
Yeah.
you know, and I understand that, you know, so I think the arts had to they had to work within different belief systems from different people, right?
Mm-hmm.
About how things should operate. And okay, so I'm just going to share with you, I helped to start the Ontario Aboriginal Film and Video Art Alliance, and we decided to do a piece called Elder Voices, Strengthening Our Cultural Ground. Somebody wanted to say, and something else, I said, no, we have cultural ground, and I'm not going to say it's new, but we need to strengthen it. But it was looking at what is cultural copyright, and how do we deal with that idea of that person in that film or in that video for this period of time. So what we did was go to 9 communities. All 9 communities had to collectively agree who they wanted. We sent out people to help with write-in. Like, people probably don't even remember these. Well, people should remember Alanisa Bonswin.
Yes,
because Alanisa
yes,
Bonswin
definitely.
did our post-production work,
Okay.
right? I mean, and Will Campbell did the pre-stuff, and Bernalda Wheeler did the, so these were, at the time, these were our forefront running. Bernalda Wheeler used to run a TV program called Our Native Land.
Yes, I
right?
remember that. I remember that, yeah.
So I brought her in to help do, you know, like different pieces. But the idea was to look at how, once again, not to work within a colonial context, but and also recognizing every reserve and every community work differently.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So how do you work within your cultural collective, within your community? How do you negotiate with your elders? And we told people that we're pretty hands-off, but the idea was, how are you going to be accountable to those knowledge keepers or elders that you want to record and keep the old tapes so nobody can reuse them in a
Right.
disrespectful way.
Yes.
So, and that was interesting, because what was interesting about it, because when we got way up north in around Sioux Lookout, their background music was fiddle music.
Oh.
Yeah, like they're
Okay.
really big into fiddle music.
Okay.
And so the idea of this was to start the idea of starting collectives, starting people using, we talked with cultural partnerships, who in their particular city could help them, because right at this moment, non-Aboriginal people had better resources than we did,
Oh,
right?
yeah,
right.
yeah, agreed.
You know, our pulling teeth, right?
Yes, yes.
Idea. So, and then to start these collective, and think about what does cultural copyright, what does a cultural collective mean? Like, how do we negotiate, you know, that idea of being collective within ourselves and in our community? So that we did that, and then we actually AFA, Aboriginal Film and Video Art Alliance, actually gave the first amount of money for that native film festival that
Okay.
started,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it helped a lot of pieces. I mean, unfortunately, AFA dissolved because, once again, funding.
Yeah.
A huge amount, there was a huge shift in funding. And the most disturbing thing was we call them the big 3, opera, dance, and I forget the other, I forgot the big 3. But we were told that we had to collaborate and work together in order to get funding. So off they went. So that left us and racialized community out on a limb. Mm-hmm. So when funding came back, it was like, it wasn't enough to sustain anything. Right now, we were like just running after any kind of money just to keep afloat. And that was the problem. Once again, I feel that there's more stability of funding now for some, or, you know, there's some really great arts initiatives that are going on in our community. But this is my favorite story. I went to Department of Heritage and the guy told me flat in my face that you will never be able to do this. And I thought, okay. So once Elder Voices was finished, we had the level of documentation. We put out newsletters. We did these videos. We did everything. I took him in a box, dropped him on his desk, and went, "See, it worked." And I walked out.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think what you're saying is that we were in those early years always up against that.
I felt it was a fight. It was always a fight. I was neither fighting, and I got a bad reputation for it too, right? Like, you got a problem, or you got a chip on your shoulder. And eventually I said, yeah, it's this big, right? But I just feel everything I tried to do during that time was a fight, because not only, and plus my age did not help me any in my size, right? Being a small, and I'd go to an event, with all these artists, and directors or whatever, and I'd be like 10, 15, younger than everybody else in the room. So when I spoke up, I felt like they're not listening. Nobody's listening to me, right? And that was a struggle. It wasn't until I really start talking the ideas, this is what I think, and then people were like, oh my God, she kind of knows what she's talking about, right? And that was hard. And I dreaded having to deal with Toronto. Oh my God, I'm sorry, but in that sense, because Hamilton was always in the shadow of Toronto when it came to the arts, right? Like in the beginning, in the early years, right? Toronto was where it was at. Right? Nothing happening in Hamilton, right? And I know when I first started NEPA, I don't know how many times I had funders say, why Hamilton?
Yeah.
Right? And I look at them, I says, why not Hamilton? I live there.
Yeah.
There's a strong Indigenous, or back then, a strong Indian community here. We're only 20 minutes away from the largest reserve in Canada.
Yeah.
Why not Hamilton? So that would be my response. I felt another one I always constantly had to fight about was the photography aspect itself, okay? Because we didn't have grandfather photographers. I couldn't go back like you talk about, the colonial way and that. They have the European way. They have this long history.
Yes.
Van Gogh, all these guys in museums, and
yes.
they're very famous. We don't have that because our opportunities were taken away. We were not allowed to express our culture or our arts or anything. And just to be truthful, in our way, arts, we didn't have an Indian word for arts, native word, because we didn't see it, like you said, it wasn't separate. It was a part of who we are. So as culture, arts and culture, so our arts came in the form of our clothing, our hair pieces, all of our surroundings, our pieces, like you said, pottery, whatever. We made it look good, that's all. And I really feel too, Indigenous people are artists. We are a visual people, and that's how we communicate, is through art. And I could be wrong, right? But I have found many artists that are Indigenous, right? And, I don't know. The fight, that's what I remember most. And it burnt me out. It burnt me out.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand the burnout. Trust me. Which the ironic twist about Hamilton is, Hamilton, outside of an Indigenous, had a really big art scene.
Oh, yeah.
It did, but it all moved to Toronto.
Yeah.
Now it's all back. Now it's all coming back.
Rent's cheaper here.
Because rent's cheaper. I don't know about that anymore. But it is hard because sometimes when you're bringing art into a place like Hamilton, and and it's hard for people to understand that you have no history in which to build that on. And let's be real. Residential schools created a huge chasm for us around art, economics, family, all these things that people think, oh yeah, your XYZ went to residential school, right? But that's not it. The layers of harm and trauma are huge because of what happened. What would our art have looked like?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, right.
I don't know.
What would our economic ability look like? Yeah. I hate that we have programs for parenting. Yeah, well, excuse me.
If you would have left us alone,
we would have still been parented. Yeah. So I think that's the thing in the early years, because when you think about where we were at, that run, it was started. I mean, it was a little bit, you know what I mean? It was starting to create. I love the story about Willie Dunn, the guitarist. They believe he's the guy who did the first, music video, because he took pictures and videotaped it with music.
Okay.
So some people argue that was the first.
Okay.
Some people argue that Pauline Johnson was the first performance artist.
Yeah.
Because remember how she would
With
shift.
dress and-
She would shift
Yeah.
and change as she
Yeah.
did her poetry,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so that, that could have been the first,
Yes. Yes.
performance artist that we would recognize in that context.
Right.
So there are things that are happening, but we don't have that history.
Yeah.
No,
it's just we have history. We just don't have it recorded somewhere for other people to see or hear. Or
it's been all over the place. And you and I have talked to, I don't know how many places I've gone across the country for like 20 plus years, where people have talking about trying to archive this information.
Yeah. Yes, we were
You know what I
talking
mean?
about
There's
this.
archival. I mean, the Banff Center, when I was at the Banff Center, we try to archive women's songs,
Yeah.
right? Archive dance. I mean, I don't know if anybody knows this, but Sadie Buck wrote the first Aboriginal opera in the world,
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
For Aboriginal people.
Sadie's still alive?
Sadie's still in the reserve.
Okay.
And she didn't write, her language was listening to different cultures and creating sounds. So when people listened to these songs, they could hear some kind of context of their language in there, whether it was whatever from around the world. We have so much in terms of what has been done in our community that has been phenomenal.
To this day, okay, here we are going in 2020, we were supposed to have a no filters needed. It was 2018. So basically, Rianne Chartland is an Indigenous curator, and she's actually from Tanganyika too, so which is weird. But she, in her youth, she was at something, and I guess Shelley Nero had brought up to her about NEPA. And she's like, what's NEPA? And again, nobody really knew. It's kind of like when NEPA closed its doors. Nobody really knew, and nobody really pressed on what NEPA had done, right? And so she found me in 2018 and said, I want you to be a part of this exhibition. I hear that you're the director, so it's called No Filters Needed. We did that exhibit. I was one of the panelists along with Brenda Minton and I think Greg Stotts. We did it at McMaster. We had an opening in that, which was great. The crazy thing was, I was shocked of how many community people came to that event, right? And I've seen a lot of old faces, but again, like you said about NEPA, we were that place, that gathering place that everybody would come to eventually at some sort, because we also had the beginning hands on doing those National Aboriginal Day.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. We did that. And again, Carol was here earlier, and I blame her for that because she was so gun-ho about National Aboriginal Day and taking over City Hall, and we need to do things. And so that was a part of NEPA too, because we led that. NEPA led that. And even with Bond, we did Bond activity, but Bond wasn't as strong, right? It was just volunteers. When we needed volunteers, we brought them in. But at the same time, NEPA led many things during that time. So in the beginning, we even did, I think, we assisted with the first Santa Claus parade.
Yes.
You remember that?
Yeah.
So that was a community event. And it was our artists that did the cutouts we had, because we were trying to contemplate Christmas to us. We really don't celebrate Christmas, so we were trying to visually come up with a float concept that suits our needs, being, the people, but not Christian-like, right? And so we had clans, right? We had trees, because that's where we're from. Someone gave us a turtle, the plastic turtle, right? There was a tree. We put a Christmas tree on the turtle, and we put a hawk at the top. So that represents the great tree of peace, right? On Turtle Island. So that's how we showcase, and that's how we went forward, representing, this is the way our people, this is what we want to show as Christmas. But I think of all of those things. So we were in the beginning. I remember at NEPA too, I got involved with It's Your Festival.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so It's Your Festival. And again, I always seen things as opportunities. And I really felt, so I put NEPA in there, and I originally thought it was a fundraiser. Forget that, we didn't make money this fundraiser. But in time, I managed to get the agencies, because I said, listen, we can't do this as a fundraiser. But what I've noticed, you'll see Indians come to this booth that you will not see going to any of the agencies. They're not a part of that, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the one thing I recognized early on. There was a different crowd of people that would come to the NEPA activities because the artists, they're being artists, but doing the festivals, like National Aboriginal Day, the festivals, that came NEPA, and Bond later took it over when NEPA closed its doors, right? But NEPA staff were really instrumental in helping to direct that, help to develop ideas to bring the people in, right? So that to me is part of NEPA's legacy. We worked with community. We did
Mm-hmm.
cultural activities. Like I look at even to the festival, that we went from a 1-dayer to a 3-dayer, right? We had art vendors. We tried to do an art exhibit all the time. We had things for the elders, a lot of art and cultural type of activity. But those were the pieces that were engaging. And so that's kind of my background, is to try to bring people together. I know you're more worldly.
I think I just think I had an opportunity to work on a national level, and the event in Tyndonega also brought in Marata Mita, the Maori filmmaker who did Once We Were Warriors, and just having that opportunity to look at that sort of narrative in the development of art and how hard it was, right? Those who come before us should be respected for what they've done.
I agree.
Do you know?
I agree.
And sometimes I don't find that, it's not my sense of knowing or understanding in the way that I've been able to, people have shared me with teachings in the way that I live my life, right? And that we have to respect those who have come before us.
Yes.
Even if I agree or don't agree with them, right? I have to respect the work they've done. I think our national treasure is definitely one of them, among many, is Elenisa Bonsawin. Yes. And you know what's really, really sad for me? I can speak to young people and mention her name and they'll go, who? And if we even understood how she changed the culture of the National Film Board, just that alone.
See, what you're saying right now is what I'm trying to do through this project. That's what I want. I want people to know, so when we leave, right, I want our younger people to know who came before them, right? Who came before them? Who helped to shape things in our community? Again, I know back in my, when I was young growing up, it was tough in the sense that there was no supports like Mohawk College or McMaster having these student programs and stuff like that. There was no supports whatsoever growing up. But yeah, the people I met, and I look at all the people over time that came through NEPA's doors, right? A lot of firsts, like I think of Sean Henry. He was the first Indigenous editor, like for a video editor and stuff like that. CBC hired him. He went up to the north. What a history as to the activities that we have done, what people we have had come through come through the doors. I can honestly say I had over 50 people that I know that came through our doors, that one way or another that we helped to shape or provide supports to, and to see where some of them went.
Yes.
To see where some of them went and where they are now. The professionals that are out there. And even I look at NEPA level, we just had a reunion in August, the end of August, right? But we had to do it all through Zoom. And that sucked, because you didn't have that same feeling of being in person, right? And especially, I haven't seen these guys for might be 30 years. 30 years. So to see them on the screen was great, but I would have loved to have been in person with them, because we shared our stories as to what we did, where But to look at where a lot of these guys are now, a lot of them, they're professors. I think of Larry McNeil. He was a board president for the longest time. He's over at Berkeley. I think it's Berkeley. He's down in the States, in California. There's a university. Anyway, he's the professor of photography.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'm like, I think it's Berkeley.
It's Berkeley.
It's Berkeley? Okay.
Yep. Berkeley.
There's also, I look at Tim Johnson. That man has gone off. He's been over, again, stateside, but he's been at the larger institutions, the Smithsonian, and that's like Rick Hill, the Smithsonian, like these guys. Yeah. Like I look at where they went in life, and it's like, wow, And I like to think too. And then even, different artists have gone on and done things. And I just, again, I was a part of that a little bit,
I think what I'm going to recognize a couple of things. First, you as an artist, because I have your artwork.
Oh,
I have your artwork.
Thank you.
I have your artwork where I work. I work in a non-Aboriginal organization, which on days can be a little tough. Mm-hmm. So then I see, by having works from people in the community, I'm always reminded of the community and people. So, and my brother has a piece. I bought a piece off of you, which was a beautiful orange piece, because we're Bear Clan, and it was Bear. I mean, he loves that piece, right?
Oh,
so
wow.
my brother has that piece. And I think what we need to recognize in terms of what NEPA did, NEPA was an incubator.
Yes.
It was a definite incubator. Yes. When you talk about arts and where people were going. And it's interesting because at the beginning of my journey was NEPA. It was NEPA. It was watching people walk around with cameras and hearing these stories, and and sometimes and we also have to look at I'm born and raised in Hamilton. I'm an Aboriginal, urban Aboriginal. Or somebody from the reserve told me, "Oh, you're one of those pavement Indians."
I heard that. I'm like, or concrete Indian. I'm like, what? That's the new name? Okay.
I go, "You're a pavement Indian." I just laughed. I went, "That's so far away from the truth." True. But I think all those things and those ideas that people can be artists, that you can move, and I think the void in Hamilton now. The absolute and total void is we don't have anything. We have some great Aboriginal organizations that are strong, that are service organizations, but what we don't have is art.
We're missing that.
We don't have an art organization. We don't, that idea people can express themselves through culture and art. I don't know if anybody, if you go along Concession Street, there's a wonderful piece on a pizza wall of an Aboriginal artist who did this beautiful piece. Okay. Do you know what I mean? And the same thing on Upper Sherman. There's a beautiful piece.
I noticed some popping up on Barton Street too.
Yeah, so there's this beautiful artwork, that's coming from Aboriginal artists. And what's really interesting is how many people I see that do art but don't see themselves as artists. Because art is, if you're looking at it from this context, right? Artists are this. But because you're saying your family's artist, right? You know what I mean? And by the way, my daughter loves Bev, right? Like, loves Bev. So the thing is if we had an arts organization in Hamilton, we can start to talk about what art is with those young people and help we just don't have that. We need, in my opinion,
a place for them to express themselves.
Whether it's they come in, they talk about art, you bring in other artists to sort of talk about their work, have the space, do galleries. The biggest thing with the Aboriginal Film and Video Art Alliance is everybody had a premiere in their community. Oh. And then we help everybody have a premiere in their community, right? Yeah. This is the work that we did to have that kind of to give back. It's reciprocity, right? Yes. You helped me, we did this, and this is what we've got to share back with you. So that's the same thing here. I mean, we got a lot of great, like I said, a lot of great organizations, but we have to recognize historically NEPA was an incubator. Yeah. It started a lot of things, even with the BOND, Branches of Native Development. How many times try to do art exhibitions within that context? Yes. Right? Yes. All the time. Try to do some kind of art piece.
Yeah, because I was in it.
Yeah, right? To do it in there. I mean, always bringing it. And I think of Buddy Martin in those story poles.
The story poles. They're gorgeous.
I mean, like, come on.
Gorgeous.
How many people in this... I'm sorry. City Hall should have story poles in front of it. Yeah. But once again, they don't know. Yeah. They don't know, right? Yeah. They don't know. Because everybody only thinks of totem poles, which are important.
Out west.
Out west, but people, because the other thing that we sometimes might run into is that pan-Indian idea of what art is. What I've recognized from my travels is art can be very different things related to a community and what that culture is, that community. Art is also related to your own consciousness, the level of your consciousness, of where you are at your being of being, you know, a Haudenosaunee person, an Ojibwe person, right? And it's not right or wrong. And what I think, when I think back to where I was as an artist young, it's very different now. I'm not a practicing artist, right? I am now just a historian, right? Because I haven't done anything artistic in a while. I moved over into the Imin side, and I realized it kind of ate my soul.
You know what? I found that
kind of ate my soul.
In the 90s, when I was working on the See Through Eyes exhibition. You're absolutely right about that, because that was my 2-year. Remember I said I had a 2-year dry spell?
Yeah.
And what I realized, all that energy, instead of going into my art, went into program and development. As being an administrator, it went into that.
Yeah.
But I did shine there by producing a large exhibition, doing all these great things, but it wasn't for me as an individual doing my artwork. So, but anyway, I'm going to have to slow this down now, and I'm going to ask you a question. Thinking of all the things that has happened to you in your life, what would be your legacy? What do you want to leave behind as Kat, like, you know, what you have accomplished, or what is your hopes and desires for our younger people, for your daughter? You know, think of that. What do you think for our community? You know, anything. Just what is your legacy? What do you hope to? What message you want to leave behind?
That we all have spirit, and in that spirit, we're all creative within that spirit. And I think creativity, really, you own that creativity. I think. What I find about the oppressive piece of art sometimes is the idea of what art should be and how art is defined, right? And I think you have the ability to define art on your own terms. Because I've seen some pretty crazy stuff, right? In terms of art goes. And that's it. But what is my legacy? I don't know. I remember Pete Isaacs once told me, you do something because it needs to be done, not because you need a hand clap. And you just recognize it and you keep doing it, right? And you try. I kept looking at art and kept seeing how it healed people, right? Yes, it does. I mean, it's now been documented that the body remembers, and that art helps trauma. So if we're coming out of historical trauma, art helps us in our spirit and our body and our mind, right? But that's what I'm saying. If art is doodling, if that makes somebody feel good, I mean, somebody might say, "Kat, that's not art; it's doodling." Yeah, but who am I to say that?
And
who
it's
am I to say
that,
right?
You know, that release. My father's was a big doodler, so I can relate to that, because he used to take his cigarette packages, cut them, and then he would do a picture on each piece, and then he would tape them. So if I went to see him, he'd pull this pack out of it, his pocket, and he would go like this, and all these pictures would drop out. And then when he was finished, he'd just pull them back up and put them in his pocket. Like, this man was unbelievable when it comes to recycling, because he used cereal boxes, you know, and then he'd get plastic and tape around them and made it like a frame. So unbelievable. But yes, thank you.
And if somebody chooses to do something, how to explain that? I think the legacy I want to leave is that nobody has to be boxed in. And if you choose to do something that's not, people would say culture or whatever, that's an artistic choice. I don't know if I can articulate this well, because you just dropped this on me. Is we've had enough of people telling us what to do, how to do it, when to do it. In art, I feel that if you want to take a bunch of cans and reconstruct them into something that speaks to you, then that's your art. As a somebody who goes, can make my own assumption about what I see, or not assumption, my own decision or perspective on what I see, right? And so it's just, I don't want anybody to be boxed in. I think the one thing about working at the Banff Center and being near the New Media Institute is like some of this off the chart art, new media art, right? And so I think we have to move, because we're going to move forward, right? Our young people are using digital.
Yes.
You know, they're using music, they're using things,
Lights,
lights in a different way,
yes.
and that just becomes another narrative of moving forward. I never want to say to somebody, you have to be here and only here.
Yes.
Then what was the point?
Yeah.
Then what really was the point, right? And I'm not into being oppressive. On good days, sometimes I'm there, but sometimes I'm not. And it's inadvertent, right? so that's I think that's the legacy. How about you? What do you want? What's your legacy?
Right now, what we're doing.
Okay, is the archive.
Right now is the archive, because I feel I did it with NEPA.
Right.
Right. I've managed to salvage 300 images that God knows where they would have wound up. And all that information, those newsletters, all the clippings, whatever, I managed to salvage that, get that over to the art gallery. Okay, and part of it has gone over to Indian Northern Affairs, and then other parts, whatever's left, if the owners are still alive and they want their pieces back, will be shipped back to them. But the other side being, part of my legacy is this, what we're doing right now. I want our history recorded, in the sense, I'm going to get emotional. Thanks a lot, Kat.
That's okay. You're a heart talker.
I know.
Speak from your heart.
I cried last session.
Speak from your heart.
But I want to leave. I want people to know who came before them. I want people to know the struggles that our people went through to make it a better place for the people who are here now and who are coming, for our children, our grandchildren. I want it to be that they are strong and know their roots, because that's the one thing I have found with our youth. They're lost. A lot of our people are lost due to residential school. So in a way, I want our people, our younger people, to be proud. I am Indian, and that's what my mother taught me. Even though it's funny, you know, we went through the stage, what are you? I'm an Indian, First Nations, I'm Aboriginal, I'm a Native, and now we're Indigenous, like how identity crisis, you know? I want them to know what they are. I am Mohawk, I am Haudenosaunee, you know, I'm Bear Clan. That's who I am. And I want my other people to feel that too. I want the youth to feel that. I want them to feel good about who they are and that they have a place and their words are valid. Yes. What they do is validated, because we just want to join too. You know, we're coming to the cities and we just want to be respected for what we do. So this is my legacy for the work I've been doing for the last couple of years. Like I said, I did a whole whack with it through McMaster and get NEPA's collection, all that done. And now I feel like once this is done, I feel kind of like, okay, my job is done. But I've had people say, oh, I wait to see what else you do, right? And I don't know what else I'll do. But once I do this, I will feel good.
Nyawagoa.
Thank you.
Your job is done because people need to know you need to rest.
Yes.
You need to rest, right?
Thank you.
All the work that you've done. So, Nyawagoa for doing that.
Oh, thank you. So, now I'm emotional again, guys. Thanks a lot. We'll call it an end.
We'll call it an end.
Call it an end. Thanks, Scott.
Done it.